Betty and Barney Hill lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where Betty was a social worker and Barney was a postal worker. Late in the evening in September of 1961, they were driving through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, returning home from a trip to Montreal, Canada, when they saw lights approaching from the sky. What followed is said to be the first well-documented, feasibly legitimate UFO abduction in history. According to the Hills, their experience began around 10:30 p.m. While Barney drove, Betty observed a bright point of light in the sky that moved upward. Because it moved erratically and grew bigger and brighter, Betty urged Barney to stop the car for a closer look and to walk the dog. Through binoculars, Betty observed an odd-shaped craft flashing multicolored light. Because her sister had several years earlier said she had seen a flying saucer, Betty thought this might be what she was observing, while Barney reasoned it was more likely a commercial airliner. But when the craft rapidly descended in his direction, Barney realized, in his words, this object that was a plane was not a plane. The Hills continued driving slowly on the isolated road, watching the craft as it came even closer. At one point, it rapidly descended toward their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. There, it silently hovered about 80 feet above the Hills, filling their entire field of view through the windshield. Barney got out of the car and stepped toward the craft. Using binoculars, he claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures peering out of the craft's windows at him. He recalled the beings were wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. The Hills reported hearing a buzzing sound, and then there's a period of missing time and memory at this point. Arriving home around dawn, the Hills were surprised to note it was several hours later than the drive should have taken. They reported they had some odd sensations and impulses they could not readily explain. Betty insisted their luggage be kept near the back door, not in the main part of the house. Their watches would never work again. The leather strap for their binoculars was torn, though they could not recall how that had happened. The toes of Barney's best dress shoes were scraped, and he reported that he felt compelled to examine his genitals in the bathroom, though he wasn't sure why, and he found nothing unusual. They both took long showers to remove possible contamination, and they each drew pictures of what they had observed. After a few hours' sleep, Betty placed the shoes and the clothing she'd worn during the drive in her closet, noting that her dress was torn at the hem, zipper, and lining. Later, she also noticed a pinkish powder on the dress. There were also markings on their car, which had not been there the previous day. These areas also had an anomalous effect on a compass when placed on the trunk. Perplexed, the Hills said that they tried to reconstruct the chronology of events after they saw the UFO, but immediately after they heard the buzzing sounds, their memories became incomplete and fragmented. In the days and weeks following, Betty had a series of vivid dreams, which she recorded in a journal. About a year after their abduction, Betty and Barney sought hypnosis therapy to help reveal to them the events of the 2 missing hours. Through many hypnosis sessions, both were able to recall in great detail what had happened, and the things they reported were quite similar in most details. While under hypnosis, they told of being taken aboard the craft with some resistance, causing the scuffing of Barney's shoes and the tears in Betty's dress, of being examined with invasive instruments, and in Betty's case, having telepathic conversation with her captors. They were able to draw pictures of the beings, the craft, and Betty even created a star map indicating where the beings had told her they were from. Over the years, many researchers have sought to either validate or debunk the Hills' account. Their story became the subject of several books, films, and documentaries. After Barney's death in 1969, Betty continued her research into UFOs for the remainder of her life and became one of the most well-known voices in UFO research. If you'd like to learn more about the Betty and Barney Hill story, I've conducted a full interview for my podcast with Betty's niece, Kathleen Martin. You can find that in the Studio A playlist or find the audio version on your favorite platform.